Hello, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks has been released. Lately, I've been waiting for the late morning, early afternoon updates from the SPC since the risk is usually relegated to the later part of the day, and I just get the latest updates. Anyway, if you're wondering about that. Like yesterday, the forecast for the rest of today, Saturday has three areas of severe weather. We have two level twos, one up here in Montana and North Dakota, another one here a little more populated beltway there, and I'll get into the details of that one in particular, and a marginal risk down here through parts of Texas and Oklahoma. I'm not going to focus too much on that one. But here's the one out east. You can see a slight risk of severe storms from central Indiana all the way up to Connecticut and southern parts of New England and a good part of Massachusetts. This would include cities like, of course, New York and Albany and Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, PA, Columbus, I should say, Ohio, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Indiana would be in that as well as, and then going backwards to Philadelphia. So let's break down the risk. The tornado risk is at a 2% risk, and it leans toward the initiation part of this. So in other words, when you see this risk and what I'll show you about wind next, you'll realize that this risk here for the tornadoes is meant to be the beginning of the thunderstorm development when the cells might be a little bit more isolated and supercellular and isolated, discrete. So there's that 2% risk that runs from, Zanesville over to Canton and Youngstown, Ohio, back over to Pittsburgh and into State College and into central parts of Pennsylvania. On NATOcast, they agree with that, except they keep their 3% back a little bit more to the west, mostly in Ohio, but the same mechanism is there. And they also highlight some possible activity there, way up there in New England. And interestingly, they have this weak upper level system, and this will apply more to Sunday. I'll get to this in a minute, but you'll see there's a little bit of a 2% tornado risk right along the Oklahoma Arkansas state line and down into Texas. Let's go back to the east, though, real quick for today. The hail risk, this is kind of flip flopping now. This starts happening when we get later into summer. And when we get these flow situations that come out of the northwest or northwest, where the hail risk is at 15% in this area here, as you can see from Columbus to State College, roughly. But the wind risk now goes up to a 30% chance of a severe wind gust within a 25-mile radius, and that stretches on from Pittsburgh all the way up to Albany, and does include some of those other areas, parts of New Jersey, basically downstate New York. Stops just shy of getting into New York City, but really close. So again, the interpretation here is that these cells start out this way, and more individual, and then line out and then cross like this, and that can produce the severe thunderstorm wind gusts. NATOcast does offer a wind product, and it's an agreement. 30%. They just take it more into New England. There's even a little tiny area there that goes up to 45%. A little bit of wind risk too around and just to the west of Dallas, and also up in parts of extreme eastern Montana, where that other level 2 area of severe weather is located. Here is CSU's outlook. So I want you to notice one little thing here, this little tornado patch that shows up here. I think that one is probably not as well supported as the one I'll show you for tomorrow, which looks a lot like that, only shifted a little. They don't mention much in tornado risk up here, except as usual, they put it more to the north than the SPC does in almost every time I look at this. Now, we'll set our sights on Sunday here, turn the page. So we have a level 3 now. This is just updated. So this is an enhanced risk of severe weather up in the northern plains, North Dakota, northwest South Dakota, a little chunk of Montana and Wyoming too. Notice that there is a marginal risk for severe weather right there that does infringe upon parts of the Ozarks, southwest Missouri, northwest Arkansas. I'll tell you why that's here in a minute. Also a little minor area there over Richmond, Virginia. Let's go first to the northern plains. I'll show you that enhanced risk and what cities are under that, Minot, North Dakota, Bismarck is under that, just north of Rapid City in that area for Sunday. The tornado risk in that area is at 2%. Didn't transfer the graphic over, but that first level of green is 2%. And notice that we have this 2% area right here. And if I zoom in on that, that does include Joplin, Rogers, and Fayetteville, and that whole Bentonville area there. Fort Smith is included, so is Tulsa. And you'll notice there's kind of an arc painted to this. You can kind of tell by the way they show it, meaning that there's an upper level system here, and the winds at the jet stream level are actually out of the due south. This is an interesting situation where you might have just enough low-level instability and favorable wind shear to support a weak tornado in any of the storms that initiate tomorrow. NATOcast for tomorrow does actually put it at the highest risk, 5%, as indicated by the Brown, and that goes much more aggressively into southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas. So I think that's interesting for folks that, and many of you are watching from the Ozarks because that's where I broadcast from, and I put out a separate Facebook listing of several of those images so you can see in the detail and not watch the video. Anyway, if we go back to the northern plains, I did want to highlight that this risk is, again, mostly a wind risk at a 30% chance of a severe wind gust, 39 miles per hour or greater in that area. And I didn't put it on here, but they did list the intensity level. It's mostly in that 59 to, let's say, 75 mile per hour wind gust area, but there might be a few that obtain greater strength than that. And the CSU outlook, again, puts that little tornado risk over even more aggressively eastward into especially Arkansas and extreme south central Missouri. And they actually put a 5% risk way up there, tucked in the northwest corner of North Dakota. And by the way, Saskatchewan has a pretty good severe weather risk. This just cuts off at the border. But actually, I think this product does go into Canada. But this just cuts off pretty, at least the way it's drawn here, right at the border. And wind and hail risks are pretty much the same. Now, on Monday, things calm down a little bit. There's only a marginal risk way out over the high plains, parts of Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado. If I show you what the CSU outlook for that area is, no tornado threats showing up with that. Hail seems to be a slightly larger risk than wind, but neither of them are ranking very high in terms of percentage. On Tuesday, this whole Dakota corridor, which is so common in June to get the thunderstorms up here, is at a 15% risk. So that is worth looking at, especially when you consider that the learning machine model at CSU puts the chance of any severe weather at 45% up in parts of North Dakota, and the hatched area is significant severe. And there's the SPC's outlook as well. And so I don't have it put on here. I should. But when it is hatched like that, it means the next level of severe weather. So, in other words, if you have 1-inch hail and 59 mile per hour wind gusts and tornadoes, the tornadoes the intensity is not really mentioned here, I don't believe, but the hail and the wind risk especially is a little bit more enhanced. So not just reaching severe criteria, but perhaps going substantially above that in North Dakota. Then it shifts east to be centered on Minnesota Wednesday, considering a storm chase there. I'd have to be convinced to go that far north. Now, this is fairly good chasing area here. The road network fails a little bit, but at least there are many areas where it is relatively flat and clear, especially in this part of the state here. And again, pretty high emphasis from CSU on that area here, with a 30% probability of any severe weather, leaning toward the western and northeastern, or the eastern and northeastern edge of this SPC's official forecast, which you can see here. The tornado risk is actually centered up around Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is right here, Minneapolis. I worked in television in Eau Claire. It was my first job way back in the past. Anyway, but I can vouch for, in terms of chasing, this is horrible country. This is the hills and pine trees, just like the Ozarks, except swap out the oak trees for the pine trees. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that was a pretty maximum risk of all the next several days. This area here, which exceeds 50% chance of a tornado, is certainly the highest bubble out of all the days coming up. And if we look now to Thursday, this kind of stretches out a little bit. So maybe a multi-day for me, starting there, ending up in the plains of Iowa or possibly northern Illinois as well. We'll finish up with the outlooks here for the 7-day periods. Here's June 6th through the 12th, today through the 12th. Again, high supercell correlations. All they do is add up each pixel's percentage throughout an entire week. So it's not a specific forecast for any given day, but it does sum up the activity. And then if we go one more week ahead to June 13th through the 19th, looks like the percentages settle down a little bit, but they are still focused over the northern plains, which is quite what you would expect. And in fact, I think I mentioned on yesterday's video, the jet stream is doing this whole thing again where there are ridge sets up here, but you get pretty fast flows still through the northern plains. It tends to set up more wind events. That looks like position is right for that. And, this doesn't differentiate between tornadoes or wind or hail. It just says supercell. So we don't know for sure, but I would strongly bet that they would start as supercells and end up as strong line segments. Same for the June 20th through the 26th period, almost the exact same area and percentages affected.